Greetings, truth seekers, paradigm busters, new world orders, civil disobedience, freedom fighters, free thinkers, higher mammals, good people of all types. How's it going? My name is Michael Parker. Welcome to the 13th episode of the Electric Pyramid. Coming to you as always from an undisclosed location somewhere in Hollyweird, California. Ladies and gentlemen, no fear of the number 13, no triskaidekaphobia. It is episode 13, and I feel really, really good about it. I'd like to say hello to our producer, Joe Kiernan. How are you?
I'm doing okay. How are you today, Michael?
I'm doing okay. I understand Joe's feeling a little under the weather, but as always, he is a pro, and you wouldn't be able to tell it from the tone of his voice.
You're a gentleman. I'm looking forward to the show, though. Honestly, I am. As always, but I have a feeling we're going to dance around a few topics I hold dear, so I'm extra excited.
I think tonight is going to be a good one. And since it is the 13th episode, I was like, you know what? We've got to make this special. So tonight we are going to be talking about the Illuminati. And the Illuminati, obviously, Illuminati is a term that gets tossed around really too generously, to the point that it almost doesn't mean anything. For example, my analogy is sometimes and I'm from the South, I'm from the Southwest, rather. Sometimes when people talk about going to get a soda pop, they say they're going to go get a Coke. So you're using this term to symbolize this entire line of products. And it's the same thing with the Illuminati. When people talk about the Illuminati, there's so many different secret societies that existed throughout history, and there's these ideas that people hold inside their heads about these secret, shadowy groups, and it gets called Illuminati. But tonight, very shortly, we're going to be joined by Josef Wages, and we will talk about the real Bavarian Illuminati. But before we go there, I want to let you guys know, I hope that you'll check out my YouTube page. It is, if you just look for Michael Parker Media, or you look for Colonel Tex, one word, COLONELTX. I've got a lot of my old dark matter shows on there, and I'm also going to be putting all of the archives of the Electric Pyramid shows on there. And in my favorites playlist, I have all of the Electric Pyramid shows that Joe has put up. So I want everyone to know that they're there. And I know that this week, a couple of times, the Revolution Radio site got taken down for whatever reason by YouTube. So I want to keep those archives up. And I was talking to some of our guests this week and letting them know that I would be putting that stuff up there. So please, you guys, subscribe, check it out. Like this week, I put up an old episode about crystal skulls that I'd done several years ago with a guy named Jop Van Eaton. And last week, I put up a old interview I'd done with David Morehouse, who is one of the original... Cool. Yeah, one of the original remote viewers. I'm going to try to get him on here as well. But we've got shows with Giorgio Tsoukalos. We've got paranormal shows with Rosemary Ellen Guiley. I've got some ancient alien stuff with Behringer. I've got a lot of different stuff on there. So I hope that you guys will check it out. Just look for Colonel Tex, all one word, COLONELTX, or look for Michael Parker Media. And I'm going to be putting all of the future episodes, and past episodes of Electric Pyramid up there. And like I say, I have all of Joe's episodes that he's put up for me as well in the favorites section. So I just wanted to let you guys know about that. And trying to think what else I want. Also on Twitter, I do try to be very active on Twitter. And I would love for you guys to look for me and hit me up. I know with the Wednesday 13 show last week, we got a lot of activity, which made me very happy.
Great show too. Awesome guy. The guy sounded really cool.
You know what? Wednesday's a great guy. He's getting ready to go to Texas to record his new record. Got a lot of really friendly feedback as a result of that show. And I appreciate it. And yeah, Joe was I say Joe. That's his real name. My gosh, a lot of Joes. But yeah, Wednesday's a great guy, and we wish him the best of luck. And when the record comes out, we will probably try to get him back on the show. And so any of you who may be listening tonight as a result of Wednesday, we appreciate that. And Joe, what else is going on in your world that we might want to know about before we get into our interview tonight?
Well, I just have a few for the month of September. I have pretty much a good month booked up of some early Hermetic masters.
Excellent.
And it's going to be very exciting, starting with my main man, Marsilio Ficino, September 7th. So tune in Sunday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern, for our sister program.
Are you going to be the primary guest on that, or are you going to be speaking to someone? I mean, I know you know it so well that
we are going to have someone come on,
okay.
and we're going to talk for a little bit, but it's pretty much going to be setting up the rest of the month, which would be Giorgio Bruno, Giordano Bruno, Dr. John Dee, and Rene Descartes, three geniuses that had keys to lots of interesting secrets, and all those secrets do exist if you know where to look. So we're gonna peel them back next month.
Well, Joe, you are a good person to talk to about all this, because tonight we're going to be discussing secrets as well. And the idea of the Illuminati, of course, they were founded on some of the ideas that were derived from the people you just spoke of, and the Enlightenment, the 1770s, 1780s. There was a lot of talk about, trying to get away from the oppression of the government and kind of forced religion. And the Bavarian Illuminati was created to speak kind of out about that. And so tonight we're going to be talking about a lot of these ideas of essentially enlightenment and rationalism and being true to yourself and being true to personal liberties. So the speaker that we're going to have on, and I think, I think, Joe, we could go ahead and reach out to him. His name is Josef Wages, and he has a new book that's going to be coming out. And essentially what it is all of the rituals of the original Bavarian Illuminati translated into English for the first time.
Sorry about that. I left the sound on.
That's quite all right. Is this Joseph?
This is.
Joseph, this is Michael Parker and Joe Kieran. Welcome to the Electric Pyramid.
How's it going, man?
It's going great, man. Thanks for coming on the show tonight.
Oh, not a problem at all. Glad to be here.
Right on. Well, I was just giving a little introduction about the secret school of wisdom, the authentic rituals and doctrines of the Illuminati, which you are, the book is coming out here in the States on October 31st. Now, you did this with Jiva Sinjanan and Reinhard Markner. And what I thought we would discuss first, because obviously the idea of the Illuminati has so many meanings to so many different people, it almost, earlier I was saying it's like when people say they're going to get a Coke instead of a soda pop. They're using this one term to kind of denote this entire line of items. So I guess where I wanted to start is perhaps you could explain what the Bavarian Illuminati really is and how it started.
Yeah, I got that one. So basically what happened is that the Bavarian Illuminati, they started in 1776, and it's founded by a professor of canon law of Ingolstadt University, a guy named Adam Weishaupt. And so basically, like in its early days, it resembles like a kind of a college fraternity, and they don't even have any degrees really until 1778, and they kind of slowly go on. So like in the first 2 or 3 years, they only have 10 members, and it's the founding members of the club. And so, somewhere in the late 1770s, they all start getting into Freemasonry, and they're wanting to expand the whole thing out. And so what it really was in the early days, it was Adam Weishaupt's Secret School of Wisdom, and that's what the title is because it appears a bunch of times throughout the text, and that was kind of his concept for it. And we've got, some earlier examples of what the Secret School of Wisdom was, and really what the what was going on there is that he wanted this first club called the School for Humanity, and the School for Humanity document is probably about 1774, so a couple of years before he sends to being the professor of canon law of Ingolstadt University. And basically what he's noticed, like in society all around him, is that the book knowledge is taught to people like that, but there's a total lack and dearth of like moral instruction, like kind of like in college towns today, people go out and have a good time on the weekends and stuff like that. Well, to him, he's kind of a purist, and he wanted people to kind of get away from all that stuff like that. So it was kind of like a reaction to that thing, but also it kind of teach the ideals of the Enlightenment. And so, like, if we can take a snapshot for a second of what Bavaria was like in the Enlightenment, it was basically part of the decaying Holy Roman Empire, and all the education was pretty much controlled by the Jesuits up until they were disbanded in 1775. And so Adam Weishaupt, he's the first professor that comes along that's not a Jesuit to actually teach in that position. And it's real controversial, and there's a lot of conflict in the staff. And so he felt like the Jesuits were oppressing him. And so really what he was trying to do was to communicate the ideals of the Enlightenment while instilling a moral regimen in his pupils. But the idea grows, and it kind of spreads into Freemasonry after that.
But he was educated by Jesuits.
Oh, totally.
And so did he feel a sincere kind of rebelling towards that, or was he okay with some of the ideas? I'm trying to understand his motivations for doing this, because in your mid-20s, you've just got a new job. I mean, this was not a small undertaking to create this type of an organization.
Oh, yeah. So, like, what's going on basically is that he's actually in his early 30s at this point that it's founded.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so he's the professor, and he's trying to kind of mold, shape, and form his students. So as far as like the Jesuit influence on the order, he copies kind of their structure, right? Because they have a very effective structure, kind of like the Jesuits would have confessions, which would serve one, to confess your sins, but two, it also has a system and apparatus for kind of like gathering intelligence throughout the organization, right? And so he kind of did this whole little system in this what he calls Quibus licet, I think is how you say it in Latin, but I'm probably not getting that right. But anyways, what the system is every month you kind of summarize what you've done as far as like for the order, books you've read, ideas you've had, noble thought, this kind of stuff like that. And you write it on a piece of paper and you send it in. And so he kind of copies that model and also some of the early organizational structure. And also later in the developed society, he takes some of the actual Jesuit position names, like provincial and things like that, and he adopts it and puts it into the system. So basically what he's done is he considers the Jesuits to be dark, unenlightened, uninformed, and so what he's doing is he's copying and using their own weapon against them, just their structure, but not totally their structure, but like a kind of a variant of it. Like he's influenced by it because one, he's been around it, two, he was educated under it, and three, he thought it was pretty effective.
And did you also say, because we spoke briefly the other day, did you say that he also, his parents died young or something? Yeah,
so Adam Weishaupt, like I think it was his mother died at birth or shortly thereafter. I forget exactly the details on that one. And then a few years later, his father died. So he's raised by his uncle, the Baron von Eichstätt, which was on his mother's side. And that Baron von Eichstätt, he's also a professor at Ingolstadt University. So Adam Weishaupt, he's kind of had a traumatic experience when he's younger in his life, and he kind of turns inwards to reading all these different books. So his uncle is this professor at the university, and he has access to all kinds of books and information that's normally banned in Bavaria because of it's not a kind of a church approved reading list. But his uncle kind of collects these things, and so he sits there as a young child, and he turns inward and starts kind of reading these books, and he's fascinated by the ideas and concepts of liberty. Like he likes guys like Rousseau, Bonnet, just different people like that. Like, and he's even some Spinoza in there too, like that. But it just like he's kind of molded and shaped by all these things, and so that's kind of the way he's formed.
And his father was a professor there as well, correct?
If I remember so, yeah.
Okay, all right. Because I'm just trying to get a picture of the man. Now, was he an only child?
I don't even know, but I think that's the case.
Okay. Well, yeah, I was just trying to understand this gentleman. So he's now a professor, and he's in his mid-30s. And how long did it take him to write these original degrees? Because from what I understand, there was only a few degrees initially, and those were the ones that he primarily composed before Knigge came on board. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. So basically, like what I was saying, like the early days of the secret society, it kind of resembles more like a college fraternity, right? So when they form, they have what's called a novice degree, and then then the Minerval degree comes onto the scene in 1778. So he goes from 1776 to 1778, and he's only got, this one degree. And so the turning point is Adam Weishaupt joins Freemasonry in 1777, right? So he's kind of influenced by this, and so he's got some insight into how he would like to structure his degrees. Now, the Minerval degree, when it's first conceived, it doesn't really resemble anything Masonic at all like that. It's more like kind of like a college fraternity initiation, something like that. And so it progresses along, and then in 1779 or so, they do Minerval Illuminatus. And so they've only got these basically first three degrees. And of the 3 degrees they have, the novice degree isn't really much of a degree. It's more of like a probationary period. Like you're assigned one person who brings you into the order. They kind of teach you, and it's like for young men. Kind of like in Freemasonry today, we've got DMLA in the States. And so it's kind of like a tutorship and a mentorship, except for this one's just a one-on-one kind of deal. And so there's no ceremonies to speak of until you become a Minerval. And so you enter the Minerval assembly, and, later it's changed to be a lot more Masonic, or have like a Masonic feel to it. But the early degree itself, like that's more like a college initiation.
Of the original 10 that were part of the group, did he just find people that he thought would be good candidates, or how did that work? Was there kind of word out that he was putting together this group? How did he come up with the original 10?
So the original 10 are all Ingolstadt University, and he gets the idea of even kind of forming a secret society, and I forget the gentleman's name off the top of my head. In 1775, it's kind of suggested to him, he's like, well, have you considered this, that, and the other? People really like these secret orders. And so he writes down the School for Humanity, and he kind of is forming out what the School for Humanity is like it was a draft constitution for this early society, and there's lots of elements that we see in it that later carry over into the Illuminati. And it gives you kind of an insight into what he's thinking. And he wants a system for like fraternal assistance, relief, charity, but also to educate people like that. So that whole Kibos Lichet system I talked about, it's included there. And so he's reaching out basically to all the young men around him that are like his immediate people like that. So it's only Ingolstadt University until about 1778 or so. And what makes them able to spread the system is the actual having a Minerval degree. Because it's kind of hard to like recruit people into a secret society if you've got a probationary period but no ceremony to follow up with.
Understood. Now, when Knigge comes on board, how did they meet up?
Well, so it goes like this. The Illuminati, Knigge comes into the order about 1780, and he's brought in by this guy, the Marquis de Costanza, and he's one of Adam Weishaupt's close associates, and he knows him through Masonic circles because Costanza is also a Freemason, and he encounters him up in Frankfurt because they're kind of probing out. And like at this point in time, the Illuminati, they don't have any Masonic associations or anything like that. There's a bunch of them that go to lodges. There's more than 10 at this point, and they're wanting to kind of spread the system and merge their system with Freemasonry. We get hints of that like in their little letters back and forth about 1778. And they're wanting to merge together Freemasonry and this secret society. And the way they come about doing it is they have this Minervalis Illuminatus degree. And it's kind of like it later becomes Illuminatus Minor. And the prerequisites are is that you have to be a Master Mason, right? And so the people that are Minervalis Illuminatus, they're what's called the magistrate of the Minerval Assembly. And it's just like kind of like the officers of a lodge. And so these guys all have to be Freemasons. And that's how they're starting to link the society together. Well, the Marquis de Costanza comes across Knigge, and he approaches him, and Knigge is talking at the time. He's like, the strict observance, which was kind of the dominant rite in Germany at that point, it was already on its last legs, and it was the one that said that, Freemasonry comes from the Knights Templar. Of course, that wasn't true at all. And so immediately after the passing of the founder, Baron von Hund in 1776, the order starts falling apart on itself. So by 1780, Knigge is already in this order, and he's pretty dissatisfied with what's going on, what he's seeing. He's a pretty well-connected guy, very respectable. But he gets this idea. He's like, well, look, if this whole thing's been kind of a hoax, I want to kind of make my own Masonic rite. I want to do great things Masonically. And so he gets the idea to start writing this secret society on his own. Well, the Marquis de Costanza says, well, why would you do that? We've got this society that you're looking for right now, and it already exists. And so he kind of joins the club, and so he's wanting to confer higher degrees than Minervalis Illuminatus, but it doesn't exist yet. So he's writing back and forth to Munich. And so Munich's sending back, oh, okay, well, yeah, we'll send them soon like that. So finally Adam Weishaupt starts writing letters back and forth to the guy. And he basically confesses to him that, look, the system that we're talking about, it doesn't really exist. It's in my head, and I've not really found any worthy collaborators until you. So how about you join in with me here, and we'll get this system done. And so at this point, he could either turn to, this society is also a fraud. I'm going to leave this and do my own thing. But he doesn't. He decides to stay. And so he develops, because Adam Weishaupt, he's not very advanced in Freemasonry at all. and he doesn't have really just like the ability and the knowledge to really write the rest of these degrees. So Knigge comes into the order, already being an experienced person in the strict observance. He includes a lot of the elements. So like the Masonic rites that he writes here are reforms of the strict observance. And, they take out all the Templar origin, stuff like that. But his reforms are basically taking it back to the pure state, because there was all these Scottish degrees that existed before the strict observance rite was even existed. And so what he's doing is he's trying to go back to that. And so the Masonic degrees that he writes, they really closely resemble today what's called the rectified Scottish rite.
Okay. So let me make sure I've got this straight. Initially, Weishaupt, when he creates this group, he's got these ideas. He's got this vision of an ideology and a thing that he's trying to express, but he doesn't really have all of the particular degrees written. He's got essentially one. The group goes on for a couple of years, and they're trading books and notes and things that they've find relevant. But what I'm not clear upon is he being honest with the group, saying, listen, I am the one who is generating this information, or is he claiming, so he is straight up about that?
Well, the first 10 guys, obviously he creates the club with them. They kind of work and develop it and polish it, but he's basically like the brain trust, because look at it. He's in a position of authority. They're looking at, okay, this is our teacher right here. And so he's got all these great sources from antiquity. He's got all these early Christian books and stuff like that. And so there's a lot of a whole lot of Christian elements in all of these rituals. And because he's a professor of canon law, it makes sense, because he's educated by the church. So he includes a lot of these things. And what he's including are kind of like the universal truths of Christianity that even transcend the faith itself. And it's just kind of universal truths. And it's to guide people, morally speaking. So what's going on here is he's up front with the people at first, right? But then the system starts growing and spreading like that. So the way he has the system structured, it's, compartmentalized and regimented, even in its early form. So you've got the novices. They don't attend the Minerval Assembly. Once you become a Minerval, you attend the Minerval Assembly. The Minerval Assembly at this point is similar to a Masonic lodge. But it's not doing Masonic things inside there. What it's doing is it's like a kind of like an academic society. Like people read papers, they're prompted to write things, and so they get these order names. Like people from antiquity, they're supposed to research them, give reports on this, and then they would have these prize questions where they it's kind of like a teacher pupil relationship, kind of like a national honors fraternity or something like that. It was here's the theme, and whoever wins the prize, they'll get a small cash prize, and we'll publish the paper, but everything's published anonymously. So that's kind of the draw to this. It's a learned society. So it's the education you can't get in a college, because it's the popular education of the Enlightenment. So that's kind of the draw to the whole thing, is to look after information, not necessarily esoteric, but just information that's suppressed at this place. So really the Illuminati only works here in Bavaria because of the oppression that's put onto them by the Catholic Church and the Jesuit order.
Understood. And because they felt that there was information that they were aware of, but it was not popular. They could not speak about it, so they had to do it within the confines of these secret meetings. And so they also took code names, and Weishaupt called himself Spartacus, and Knigge called himself Philo.
Yeah.
And did all the members take a coded name?
Okay, so the first 10, they got to pick their own order name, and then after that, it's assigned to the person. So, say you joined the Illuminati, and you're assigned the name Zeno, right? So you go and you start looking up, okay, who is this Zeno guy? And so there's there's a couple of guys in the antiquity named Zeno, and so you start taking notes on it, and you figure out, which one is this guy? Everything you can learn about him, the books that he did, try and get copies of the books that he did. That kind of thing, just researching this person. It's the task is supposed to get you thinking about it, but it also serves as a means if you're writing letters back and forth like that. Okay, this guy, who is this Zeno guy? I don't even know who this is. And then so the way they would date their letters and stuff, they would use the modified Zoroastrian calendar, where they would take the year and the month from the Persian calendar. So it'd be the Zoroastrian years, the Persian months, and they would also, if they wanted to encode anything, they had a little simple substitution cipher. And so basically it was to communicate ideas. And they're not really communicating any secrets. So like all the letters that still exist, if you look at it and you crack the ciphers like that, it's just like names of places and things like that. So all they're concealing is like if you were an outside person and somehow or another you came across this letter, you don't know who it's written by, who it's written to, when it's written, any of the places involved, and there might be some cipher coded stuff inside there too. So it's just it's a means of encryption.
Mm-hmm. So the goal of the order, as they became more popular, and it's amazing they were only around for 10 or 12 years. But what was their ultimate goal? I mean, what was it they were trying to do within the time frame that they existed?
Well, what they were doing is there's 2 points of view on this. The first one is the explicit thing where they're trying to make virtue victorious and to eliminate vice. So they're basically of the opinion that that people have a means of perfectibility, not absolute perfection, but just like trying to be a good person, to improve yourself, to be the best you can be. The morality of the teaching is the golden rule. It's do unto others as they would have them do unto you. Just real simple, basic things like that. And one of the lectures they go into, they're like, basically like these ideas, they're not complex ideas. They're simple and profound. And if you were to communicate them, like I was to tell you about some of these universal truths that you've already heard before like that, you're like, okay, I've heard this before. But you do it within the construct of like secrecy and kind of put like an air of mystique about the whole thing. And the candidate hangs on every word, and it becomes more important because they're going through an initiatic experience. So it's kind of like a means of ingraining and training in someone's mind the significance of these ideas.
I understand. So they were trying to enlighten people. They were trying to make people better. I guess the question is, so why did the system fear them so much? Why were they? Why did they appear to be such a dangerous group? Okay, well, if you look throughout history, and they even talk about this like in the ritual text. Like if you look throughout history, it's always like one person rises up and becomes great at the expense of another person being small, but these people can trade places back and forth. Well, what is it that gives one man power over another man? And it's being in the indispensable need of another. But if the other person becomes in the need of another person, who becomes the master? And so what they're saying is history is a constant balance of back and forth changing of powers, and that their view is that man started out in a pure state, but really, that's probably not exactly true. But that's what they communicate in these degrees, and there's basically they want to restore mankind back to his original dignity, to raise him up, to make virtue victorious, to do good. That's it. And so what their goals to reform society consisted of not having like any kind of overthrow of any kind of government, not anything subversive or radical like that, because they argue also in the degree text that like if you overthrow one tyrant, all you're doing is setting the stage for the next tyrant. Or say you have a good monarch for a while, that guy can't guarantee the future conduct of his heirs, right? And so you're not going to reform society. And what is it that's missing in society? We have all the book learning in the world. Anything a person seeks out, they can pursue and become a master at it, right? But what's not being taught is morality, to do to others as you'd have them do unto you, to be a good person, to serve mankind, not to abuse mankind. And so this is how they planned on reforming society. So they're educating teachers, important artists, painters, philosophers, authors. And so that's what they're doing, is they're going after the most influential people in society, and not for a nefarious purpose, but to reform society. In their point of view is that, the mankind has fallen, and it's because they don't respect the rights of other people. And so what they wanted to do to reform society was like, these different monarchs, or even like regular governments, was to put their people into these positions of power. Now, absolute power corrupts absolutely, we know, but what their thought was that if we try this and we educate people morally and we test them along the way, so that's what the degrees are, is a test of people, if they're actually adhering to these tenets, right? And so what they want to do is surround all these governments with these people and change society for the better. And so that not to even rule directly, but to rule indirectly. Because if you think about it, like, is the president of the United States, is he really the final arbiter of power? Right, I understand. To be the power behind the throne, essentially.
Right, just like kind of not in a nefarious way, but like in like offering advice, guidance, direction, purpose, experience, like all these things like that, counsel. That's how they were trying to reform society.
I understand. And I think I heard you mention also in another interview, you were talking about when they went out and they looked for candidates, they were looking for the people like you just spoke about. They were looking for artists. They were looking for thinkers. They were looking for writers. They were looking for literary people. They were not looking for people of financial wealth.
Right. So the earlier strict observance, people were attracted to that system, and it was kind of like, and they were also had kind of a utopian worldview of reforming society, just exactly almost on the same lines. And so what we see here is these ideas aren't exclusive to the Illuminati. They're not exclusive to the strict observance. They're speaking out from society itself, where people are tired of living under oppression, like that, not being listened to having their property seized from them, like at someone's whim, these kind of things like that, where like social injustice. And what they want is social justice, in a sense. And so to enact this justice, they have to reform education from the inside out, and to basically to instead of a trickle down, a trickle up thing like that towards power.
Yeah, you mentioned the utopian thing, and this is one of the things that has been a bit contradictory for me, because obviously some of the pop stereotypes of a Illuminati is that it is some type of nefarious group, but also the idea that it was this group trying to create some kind of socialist utopia or what have you. And yet I have heard you describe them almost, if they were politicians in a contemporary sense, they would be libertarian. So I'm trying to understand where their feelings about property and capital and things like that. How did that work in their view?
Okay, so what we basically have here is their view on property. They're not against the abolition of private property, so they're not communist, they're not socialist. What they're against is excessive wealth. Like, think within our society itself, like that. Maybe the top 1, maybe top 0.5% like that probably controls about 30 or 40% of all assets and wealth in our society. And
Yes.
what the point they make out in all these degrees is, like, if you look through antiquity, and that's what they're doing, is studying the past, right? So if you look throughout antiquity, every time a society gets to this point like that, it makes itself rife for revolution because it's corruption. But that it's going to bring, but there's also a natural reaction to it like that. So we go back and forth, and basically it's likened to like a ship drifting on the seas with no sails like that. And what they propose to do is to grab hold of the rudder and to steer it on the right course. So they're not looking for when I say utopia, I mean like Sir Francis Bacon's Utopia, like in that book where he's talking about an ideal society, not like not even in a real, tangible, perfectible kind of sense like that, but something to aim towards, like knowing we're never going to reach this goal, but at the same point in time, let's try and make society the way that we want to make it. And it's not exclusive to one ideology. It's exclusive to just trying to do the right thing to do good.
Right. Well, these were all very progressive ideas. And when I say that, I mean progressive and not in a political sense, but just a new and innovative sense. I mean, a lot of these ideas were ahead of their time.
Oh, totally. And what's crazy about it is you look in the highest degrees like that. So the highest degrees, they were never finished at all. They're like in essay form. And when you read these degrees like that, I mean, it's amazing the stuff that's inside there, because they talk about like one thing's like how to like predict future events, and it's basically to study the past, to make inferences and conclusions, and to predict where things are going in the future, and not like in a mystical kind of sense, but just doing like in an educated, like making the best case hypothesis for what could happen. And that's what they're talking about in that stuff. So they have that kind of element in there. In the Rex degree, they talk about, they basically through a rationalistic kind of way prove the existence of God and the immortality of the soul, but not through a religious sense, but through secular reasoning, observation, while at the same point in time refuting materialism. Like in materialism, I mean like people that view like this whole world as a conglomeration of dead matter, that there's nothing behind it. There's, it's here for a second. Like it's just like, all we have is this life and there's nothing after it. And that's not what they're talking about. They're saying that, just the existence of things like that. We have 5 modes of perception, our senses, but take one sense away and we can look at the world in an entirely different way, and it doesn't mean one point of view is more or less correct than the other. What they're saying is that this world is created with these senses in mind, though there may be other phenomenon outside of this world that we're ill-equipped to perceive. And so it kind of goes along these lines. So I mean, it's really deep philosophical stuff in the last 2 degrees.
The Rex degree was the final degree, and you said you moved very quickly, and that was very impressive. You basically said that they proved the existence of God in that degree, argumentatively.
Well, not an argument. Sorry, it was more like a line of reasoning, like if-then logic, right?
Fantastic. That's wow. That's huge.
Oh, it's amazing. And you know what's crazy about it is people like the Rex degree and the Magus degree, they don't come around, like they're not published in any language like that. They're like in just like private document form until about 1994, if I remember right. In Germany, they start getting these papers back that were confiscated in World War II by the Nazis and then were later captured by the Soviets. And after the fall of the Soviet Union, it took them until about 1994 to get every last thing back from Russia. And so they're going through these papers and they discover these 2 lost degrees. Well, when we were doing these books, we started looking around for other places like that, and come to find out, Adam Weishaupt, in like some of his writings in 1787 and 1788, he's publishing excerpts from these degrees, and in one of them, which is called in English On Materialism and Idealism, he basically puts a pretty large chunk of the Rex degree in that one. So, in fact, these degrees had been, pieces of them were published all along, but he didn't present them as a degree system. He put them as philosophical texts because that's really what they were in the first place. Mm-hmm. So, in a lot of ways, he finished the Rex degree in that book called On Materialism and Idealism. Like, so look up sometime, like, what idealism was.
Okay, so let's back up a little bit because I did want to go to this, and you kind of brought it up then. So the book that you're doing now, you guys, you and your partners, Josef Wages and Reinhard Martner, you have taken these documents that have been missing for all this time. Explain how that happened, because I was not aware about this, that the Nazis took all these documents from the Masons.
Yeah, so what was going on, like, Freemasonry, since its inception like that, there's always been someone saying, just like the Illuminati were later persecuted, even from like the very beginning, the Freemasonry proper, 1717 Grand Lodge of England, that's the story. It was probably going on a little bit before that, but like in an organized sense, 1717 onwards. And by the 1720s, the first anti-Masonic papers are going on. And so basically any type of group that would meet in secret like that, people's natural assumption is, oh, these guys are doing bad things. Oh, they're so secret. Why can't we get in there? And the thing is, it's the means of secrecy like that is, like I mentioned earlier, is to make profoundly simple ideas profound and meaningful and valuable. It's just through the initiatic experience. So like what's going on is as this thing progresses like that, there's always been opposition to Freemasonry. Well, look at Nazi Germany, right? They already have, like, from World War I, they basically blamed the bankers, the Jewish people, for all these, for basically stabbing them in the back during World War I. Like, here we were about to snatch a victory, and they just up and surrendered. And so a lot of these suspicions and things like that, and these feelings of betrayal, in addition to having hyperinflation and having all the war debt weighed on them, even though they didn't start World War I, it creates this power vacuum for, like, a person like a Hitler to come into power. And so Hitler, he's deeply, like, anti-Semitic. So you look at Freemasonry, right? We have, like, the Temple of Solomon inside of it. And it's not like a little thing like that. It's a symbolical thing, but to an uninitiated person or someone looking at it from the outside, oh, look, this must be some kind of Jewish organization. So naturally, like, once the Nazis come to power like that, in the early days, they, would kind of go in there and, like, by force close these places up. But towards the, at least as far as Germany goes, towards, middle 30s like that, it's people, there's voluntarily shutting these lodges down like that. And, even in the Holocaust, there were a number of Freemasons that were persecuted. So as the Nazis advanced throughout, continental Europe, as they rise to power through the late 30s, early 40s, they shut down these lodges, send all these papers back, and there's this division within the SS called the RSHA back in Berlin. Yes. And so what they're looking for is, like, all these subversive plots that, supposedly that Freemasonry is leveling like that. So basically they take the entire history of continental Freemasonry, all the way back, capture this stuff, send it to Berlin, and, there's God knows how many, like, untold things that have been lost, like, that they're totally destroyed, gone, or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so they're studying all these papers. They put out, like, some preliminary report, But it leads to nothing because there is nothing there. Like, they have an idea, and so they're basically trying to prove a conspiracy theory that they have, that it's this big Jewish plot for world domination, and these are horrible people. And so basically they have all these papers, along with a lot of the Final Solution papers, and the Nazis take these things from Berlin and hide it in this cave in Silesia. Well, the Soviets capture it, and they take it back to Moscow, and it stays there until the fall of the Berlin Wall, and it wasn't until the early 90s. I think it was 1990 or 91 when some of the stuff starts coming back, and then by 94, pretty much all of it's back.
And you took it upon yourself to actually go and look for a lot of the documents that went in the book. Tell me about how you got interested in this, and what compelled you to take on this work.
Well, I'd always kind of read about this kind of stuff like that, and you hear all these different conspiracy things like that. I'm the kind of person, I want to find out something. I'll put my mind to it, and I'll find everything there is to know about it. And so I'd taken 4 years of German in high school, 4 years in college, and so I could do pretty well in German myself. And so the things you read like that, in like the Proofs of a Conspiracy, memoirs on the history of Jacobinism, all these contemporary books like in the late 1790s that were published against the Illuminati. Mm-hmm. You read these things like that, and it's like, hey, well, what's the source document? Well, like you look what their sources are, and it's like badly butchered and misspelled German things. I was like, well, if the level of scholarship is this bad, what about other things? So you start looking on Google Books, and at this point in time, like, they were just starting to bring all these books online on the Google Books. It was starting to come into its own, and there was all these like original books that were in German. They were referencing a book that's called Some Original Writings. So in Some Original Writings, this book wasn't in the public domain, so I hired a research student over there at Duke University to go and photocopy this whole book. So I put it on the web, and it was received pretty well by a lot of people like that, but it still hadn't been deciphered or translated or anything. Mm-hmm. And so I started looking for more documents out of that. What was that book?
The EOS?
Proofs of a Conspiracy. Yeah. Okay. And so they had this book in there called Better Than Horace. Well, I started looking around for it, and sure enough, I found a printed copy of it in a German university library. And so I got a copy of that one. I was blown away when I saw it, because it's written like the characters read like you're reading from left to right, but it's written in German from right to left. So like if you look at it on the paper, it looks like it's in some kind of crazy foreign language, and it was like kind of a means of deciphering.
Why did they do that? Just to make it more difficult? I mean,
No, this book was pretty rough. It was a thing like, have you ever heard of militant deism?
I'm not sure. I've heard of deism.
So, deism basically just means like you believe that the existence of God and like the immortality of the soul. Like everything else, that's your opinion. However you want to interpret it, however you interpret it. Some people do it from a Christian perspective. There's Christian deism. There's people that look at it in different kind of ways. So it's like a mode of thought. But this militant form of deism, they're basically attacking a lot of the customs of the Catholic Church in this document. It's an Illuminati treatise. And I think I can't prove it, but the way it reads like something that maybe someone wrote in a Minerval assembly, and they thought it was pretty cool. But it being published from right to left, it means it was subversive, and it definitely wasn't sanctioned by the Illuminati. It was probably someone inside there, because a lot of the ideas and words that come through like that, it's straight out of the ritual book. But what's going on in this document is they're putting this kind of subversive, kind of like poking at Christianity, but not really Christianity proper, but more like Catholicism is the thing. So that's why it's written backwards. Yeah, and so they published it. It's published in Amsterdam, and it's really published in Berlin, and they don't put anybody's name on it. So yeah, it was pretty licentious. So through this document, I got in contact with Reinhard Martner, and over the years, he helped me gain access to other books and stuff like that were digitized but weren't public. And so I started kind of collecting the whole archive. And then so I forget what year it was, but I had this big Scribd account at one point, and I literally put every last thing I could find on there. I mean, it was all like basically every book that was ever written about the Illuminati and the contemporary time period. I have literally every last one of them that's on there. Well, sometime like in 2010 or so, Scribd thought it was a good idea to go ahead and cancel my account, but they kept all my documents out there, so that was nice of them at least.
Why did they cancel your account?
I don't even know. That's what the craziest part about the whole thing is like maybe they thought I had copyrighted material. Well, the thing is, all these things appear on Google Books later on, so it really, there was no reason for it, but I think it was a copyright issue probably.
Right. But they canceled the account, but they kept the documents.
Oh yeah, because I was bringing them all kinds of traffic. I mean, I had on some of those books, I had 20,000 hits on like one of these books that was just like super duper rare. And the reason why, I think this conspiracy version of what the Illuminati was for so long was that the information was not available. Mm-hmm. It's written in 18th century Bavarian German with the spellings are different, and there's a whole lot of vocabulary words that don't match up with modern German. Kind of like in our language, we have like the these, the thous, the heretofores, the hithertos, and things like that. Where like you throw it, and then also just the style of speech was more like a prose style of speech. And so you put all these things together, so you have like really rare documents that nobody can get access to unless you live in Germany, unless you're probably a historian until Google Books and myself come along. You've got an 18th century dialect and a whole list of vocabulary words, and then also like order specific words, like where they have like not things that are encoded, but things like that you would have no idea what they're even talking about unless you look this stuff up. So these guys were like seriously educated. I mean, like the things that are in even our book, like the sources like that. I mean, they were so well read, it was ridiculous.
And so they weren't, are you saying that they weren't speaking with any like particular regional dialects? That wasn't confusing. It was just how well read they were and the way they constructed their sentences.
Well, yeah, so the accessibility is the main issue, right? The second issue is that just the grammatical nature of
yes.
The structure of the syntax, all these things like that. It's hard to for a modern German to read it. Like it's legible like that, but it's kind of like if you were to go and pick up a Thomas Paine pamphlet and start reading the thing like that, you would understand what it's saying, but you really have to think about it because it's not
a laborious read.
Yeah, I mean it's tough because they've got really long words and words that we don't even use anymore. And it's kind of sad actually because one of the fun things about doing this project was it really kind of opens up your eyes to how far society has changed from the time when people read books and studied things like that. And I wish really society would go a lot back to that because there's a lot more value in learning and reading and things like that. And so if people would probably spend more time cracking books and less time watching TV, I think we'd probably be a lot better off. Just kind of one of my observations from doing this thing.
Absolutely. I would agree. Well, I know that we're coming up on the top of the hour. We'll be taking a break in a minute, but when we come back, and we can start on this a little bit now, when you decided that you were going to take these documents and translate them, I know that you can read German, but somehow you hooked up with Jiva Sinjanan. Explain that.
Okay, yeah. So Jiva, he did the Philo's book. I think you've seen that one. It was Philo's reply to questions. Yeah, so
I think we put that in the chat room as well because I gave Joe Kieran, the producer, some of these links earlier. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, so basically he puts this book out there. I've been looking for years to do this stuff. So me and Reinhardt had been kicking around for a long time. Let's do this ritual book like that because he's doing the correspondence series of books, or in German it's called the Correspondence, and it's basically all the letters that exist on the Illuminati that's ever been published ever, or that's ever been written ever, and a lot of things that, they're in private collections, family archives, and things like that. And so he's gone, and his team have gone to these different places and picked up all these things and brought back in all this knowledge. And there's nothing like bombshell per se and the stuff like that, but it's perspective and insight. So a lot of the surviving letters and things like that are the highest members in the Illuminati. So you've got a unique window kind of peering into what's going on, the internal strife, planning, organization, thoughts, ideas, even gossip and things like that that's inside there. And it's really kind of a neat little window into that. So we've been planning this for years. And so if you think about it, with that kind of book like that, you've got insight into the order, but no one's really published all these things and put them back together. So in the early 1700s, they published all these books, or not sorry, early 1700s, the late 1700s, all these books start getting published. And, but none of it's ever put into one thing. So you might have the priest and the regent degree in one book and the Scottish knight in another book. And these different degrees are out there, but no one's put it all into one place. And so, yeah, so he had the idea, Reinhardt had the idea to do this stuff like that. So he kind of put an outline together of this is how it would be structured. And so I was like, okay. And so I literally went out there and got all the degrees that existed like that and just transposed every last one of them, did them all. And, it took a long time to do it. And then so about the time I'm, half to 3/4 of the way of going through, of doing all this stuff like that, Jiva's book comes onto the market, and so I buy it, I read it, and I'm really impressed with it because, you know, Jiva's from Frankfurt, so he's a native, and that's what you want, like when you're translating this language.
Mm-hmm.
And so he goes in there, and, you know, naturally his abilities are far beyond mine. He's a professional translator, and so he takes this just based on the reading that I got out of the Philo book. I knew that he was exactly the right person for this job. And so me and him started working on this project off to the side, and we got maybe a third of the way done, started translating the stuff like that when I kind of showed Reinhard what we were onto like that. And so he jumped on board, and then Reinhard's contribution to the thing is, so we have all these printed degrees, right? So we started with a transcript of everything that's been printed ever. We translated it all into English. Now he goes back and he goes to the archives, and there's several good ritual books left. You know, there's slight variations, but it's variations by like copying degrees and things like that, because back then they weren't printing any of this stuff. It was all hand scribed stuff. And so, you know, many thousands of pages, if you were to put it all into one folio. And so Reinhard goes and he checks all these degrees back and forth. We modify the translations, tune them out like that. I mean, what you have basically when this book is done, it's literally the best copy from the best examples, and all the illustrations that are in the book are in the right spots from the original and the best ritual text that still exists. And so what you end up with is basically like a master ritual book that's everything that's in there, and even some extra stuff, some essays and things like that would have been like sample questions for things in the Minerval Assembly, and also all the early documents of the order that were later canceled and superseded. And so it's like one of the greatest things I've ever done.
Well, this is a tremendous work, and my God, how big is this book going to be? It sounds.
Right now it's at 560 or so pages like that. Like we're still waiting for the final typesets to come back. Right. And once all that stuff's done, like, you know, it's actually, it's not very far away right now, but it's in the 560 range, probably, something like that.
Okay. So the book comes out on October 31st. And, mm-hmm. Did you guys have difficulty finding a distributor for it, or did you already know that, Masonic Lewis was going to take it, or how did that come about?
Well, I kind of did a little bit of searching around like that. And really, Lewis is the best person that's equipped to do a book like this, because they're already into publishing Masonic rituals, and you know they had. I got some connections with some people like that, and then was able to present the book for them like that. And then the next thing you know, we've got a book deal.
Fantastic. Well, this is a big deal. We're speaking with Josef Wages. We are talking about the new book, which will be out on the 31st of October. And we're going to be taking a break in a moment. This is the Electric Pyramid. My name is Michael Parker. And Joe Kiernan, do you have anything you want to throw in before we take the break?
I think it's all fantastic. I think I don't even know how you find the time to get all that done.
If you want to know the truth, so I work full time as a mechanical designer for HDR architecture, and so I'm on these mega projects all the time like that. And so it's work really hard at the office, come home, spend time with the family. The family goes to sleep, and then gun it till 2, 3 in the morning every night, and do it for 5 years straight. You can finish it.
Holy cow, my friend. You are a hard-working man. We were talking about the Secret School of Wisdom, the authentic rituals and doctrines of the Illuminati. My name is Michael Parker. This is the Electric Pyramid. In the second hour, we're going to be talking about dispelling some Illuminati myths. We are going to let Joseph kind of walk us through a few things that probably a lot of people think had their origins within the Illuminati, but not exactly. So it is coming time for the break. I think let's call it for the moment. We'll see you on the other side. Greetings, truth seekers. My name is Michael Parker. Welcome to the second hour of the Electric Pyramid. Coming to you as always from an undisclosed location somewhere in crazy Hollywood, California. Today is Thursday, August the 21st, or perhaps it's the 22nd, depending where you are. We are speaking with Josef Wages tonight. He is a Freemason historian. He's the author of the forthcoming book, The Colombian Illuminati. And tonight we are talking about the Bavarian Illuminati, what it really was, who the primary characters were, what its legacy is, and how it's not what you think it is. The Illuminati is a powerful, almost pop culture archetype at this point. I mean, a lot of people have projected many types of ideas onto the term Illuminati, almost to the effect that it's lost some of its some of its meaning. But the Bavarian Illuminati was a real organization, and it was founded by Adam Weishaupt, and that's what we're learning about tonight. So I want to welcome Josef Wages back to the show. Josef, you still there?
Still here.
Right on. Thank you. I kind of jumped the gun right before the break, wanting to talk about some conspiracy theories and dispelling some myths. So I will do that in just a little bit, but I wanted to pick it back up again with towards the end of the Bavarian Illuminati proper, Adam Weishaupt and Knigge, I guess they had a bit of a falling out. Is that correct?
That's right.
And why was that?
Okay, so what's going on here is Adam Weishaupt, he's got this idea for what his secret school of wisdom, the Order of the Illuminati, what he wants it to be. And the trouble is that he's getting older, and the original members like that are getting older like that are wanting more knowledge like that as they start spreading with a Minerval degree and opening up in Bavaria and some of these local towns around Ingolstadt. They start opening up these Minerval assemblies. People start thirsting for more knowledge and ascension. At about the same point in time, Adam Weishaupt's becoming pretty experienced himself, Masonically speaking, and so he's wanting to kind of spread the order out because basically there's this existential crisis from the beginning like that where people want more society than actually exists. And so he brings Knigge on because he's not advanced Masonically enough to write these degrees. And Knigge has his own ideas in mind about what he wants his reform of the strict observance to be, and also just how to reform, just Freemasonry in general. And he wants it to go back to a more pure form. And so you have these two conflicting visions for what this society is supposed to be. So on the one hand, Adam Weishaupt, yes, he's the founder, yes, he's the leader and the general, but on the other hand, the creative content really is all Knigge as far as the higher degrees like that go. And so what's going on here is that there's this power dynamic, a struggle between these two guys back and forth for control over this organization. And a lot of the petty fights and stuff they get into, you can read about it in the correspondence where it's they're fighting over, I want this here, I want this there, I want this to be structured this way, I don't like this, add this, take this out. And so if you think about it, there's lots of different types of personalities out there. Some people respond well to criticism, and Knigge, he's a pretty good guy. And, he takes criticism like that, but at the point of being pedantic, Adam Weishaupt, because, he's kind of got this control thing about his personality. And so it basically sets them at odds with each other. And so it all comes to a boil, right after they finish the Regent degree. They get all the degrees that we know of today, prior to Magus and Rex. Knigge writes, easily 2/3 of all the degrees that exist at this point. And about the point he's finishing up Regent and it's starting to be conferred and stuff like that, Adam Weishaupt sends him yet more revisions for this Regent degree. And he's not going to have it. He's like, look, we've already agreed that this is fine. And the agreement they had was he could write and reform anything he wanted to. He was into the Areopagus, which was the ruling council of the Illuminati. It's the first 10 members, right? And different guys get added on along the way. But all the changes to ritual and addition of new ritual has to be approved by them. Adam Weishaupt gets the final say, of course, but it's the means of the balance of power and the governing structure of the order. And so they approve all these changes. So he's okay, fine, I got this approved. I'm going to go ahead and start conferring them. And Adam Weishaupt comes back, he's no, I want to add these few things here. Let's move this here. And that kind of stuff. He's look, I can't change it. We're already conferring this degree. If I change this degree, everyone in this system is going to realize that, this isn't an old system at all. Look, they just modified the entire degree structure.
Right, we're making it up on the fly.
Yeah, these guys are winging it, basically.
Yeah.
And, that doesn't really sit very well. And so basically he's like, look, I've had it. Like, I resigned from the society. You can do whatever you want with it. And so he quits. And also about this point like that too, there's internal suspicions of like, even the members of the order, they're like, what is the purpose of this thing? It's a fun club and everything like that. But what are they building towards? You have like internal suspicion. And so Knigge, he brings on, there's just short of like 2,000 members in the final structure of this order, right? He brings on like almost like 13 or 1,400 members himself. So basically, he's got a huge power block within the order that are, or he's right. I should say he just brings them on 1,400 people. He's responsible for a vast number of people. I mean, like hundreds of people like that, and through them, these other people come in. So basically, he's got his own power base within the order, and the largest part of it. So you look at this guy, and he resigns from this order, and so like it basically sets the ball rolling that this order's on its way out. And so basically, he resigns from the order, turns all his papers in. About the same point in time, there's a big scandal going on in Bavaria, and so to kind of like shift the balance of power away, there's like this land speculation, or not land speculation, where basically a land exchange where Karl Theodor, the Elector of Bavaria, is trying to get some land, and it doesn't go right. And so basically to distract away from this political thing he's facing, they run with this whole Illuminati thing where basically like it's a distraction, right? So from the get-go, the Illuminati has always been like a kind of a distraction, like, don't look over here, not this cup, what's under this cup? Yeah, this one's the Illuminati. Look at these guys. They're plotting against us all. And so they publish a bunch of like their papers once they're seized, and they cherry pick it and censor out some names in it so they don't embarrass anyone, and they're not liable for anything. But at the same point, they pick some of the more embarrassing letters, and they take like segments of degrees and stuff in these early like exposés to kind of shame them. Oh, look at these guys. Look, they claim to be after virtue, but look, it's like some of the internal gossip I was talking about. They smear them a little bit. And so it's a convenient distraction away from some kind of political boondoggle.
And so the result of this is they're going to try to run Weishaupt out of town. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, he resigns from his chair at Ingolstadt University like that, and he goes to Ratisbon and then later ends up in Regensburg like that. So, I mean, there's definitely pressure applied to, politely leave like that. But I mean, on paper, yeah, it's officially it's his decision to leave. But yeah, I mean, he had to be under all kinds of pressure because, he's being shamed. He's got these people speaking out against him. And so like to kind of exacerbate the whole situation, Karl Theodor starts issuing these edicts against the Illuminati. First one's like, it's real vague, and it's like, oh, all these secret societies, this, that, and the other like that. So people are like, well, is it the Illuminati? Is it Freemasonry? Is it the Rosicrucians? What are we talking about here? The second edict, they clarify and call the Illuminati out by name. And then there's four total edicts, if I remember right. Maybe it's three. I think it's four, though. And so basically along the way like that, it progresses to where, like, look, if you're a member of this thing like that, will arrest you, and you could be subject to capital punishment, is basically how it reads. Now, nobody's executed or anything like that, but, they're definitely shamed and embarrassed and that kind of thing like that. So kind of like how Hitler went after Freemasons in Germany like that, because they were a threat to the power structure, but they were also a convenient scapegoat. It's the exact same thing here. Yeah.
There was an interesting story where one of the ways that, if I think I got this correct, that one of the ways they obtained some of these documents, it seems like one of the people that was a courier or something got struck by lightning.
Yeah, Jacob Land. Like, so when I first heard the story, I was like, man, this does not sound legitimate at all.
Right.
I was like, this has got to be a conspiracy theory. Well,
it's
actually,
pretty sensational.
It's true. That's the most bizarre part. I didn't even believe it until I saw it. And but the narrative's a little bit different, right?
Okay.
And so what's going on? Like the context behind all this is he's supposed to be going over. I want to say Silesia, but I could be wrong. But he's basically this guy Wand is supposed to be going over and basically gathering intelligence about these lodges, because I think the guy's a Scottish Knight at this point. So like one of the things the Scottish Knight does is he's basically trying to perfect Freemasonry. So the Illuminati, like when they have their Masonic degrees, they create a schism in Freemasonry where it's its own Masonic rite, because when they're wanting to charter these new lodges, like right when Knigge comes on board and he copies the three symbolic degrees out of the Frankfurt Lodge Einigkeit, he copies these their symbolic degrees in the Constitution book, changes them a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason he had to do it is because they were trying to get charters from the Grand Lodge in Berlin to charter these new lodges. Well, back then it was like ridiculously expensive. I mean, even today it's expensive to do this thing, and you have to get all these different approvals and stuff like that. So it didn't go right for them. Long story short, and so they're like, all right, well, fine, we'll charter our own lodges. So they become irregular within Freemasonry at this point. And so one of the duties the Scottish Knight's supposed to do is, join these other Masonic systems, get a hold of their degrees if you can, and copy them. So that way, if our people want to join these other rites or whatever like that, we can say, hey, look, for a small fee here, you can actually read these degrees. You don't need to go through their systems like that. We've got them all right here. So it's a means of keeping people in the order, but also, kind of like espionage and things like that. So what Lange was doing at this point in time is he was going over to some of these other lodges, and the questions that were on this list that was with him were, who's the master of the lodge? Do you know the people over here? What Masonic system are they working? Do they have any degrees higher than the third degree? Different things like that. So it's like it's intelligence gathering. And so he's a Scottish Knight at this point, I think, and he's gathering. He's supposed to go on this reconnaissance mission. Well, they're out walking outside, I think in Regensburg, and lightning strikes and it kills him dead.
Wow. And Weishaupt was in this gentleman's presence at the time?
Yeah, well? They were out walking around. It wasn't they were riding on a horse. I know that one's been out there. Okay. They were out walking around and lightning strikes the ground, kind of like, some guy's out fishing or something like that in the lake and, lightning strikes and he's dead. It's the same kind of thing.
Okay. I want to shift gears a little bit because I also wanted to ask you about the influence, if there was any, of the Illuminati in what was about to become the United States of America, because obviously May 1st, 1776, when the Illuminati was formed, we know what was going on in the U.S. at that point. So tell me a bit about any influence that may have been occurring in the U.S. at that time with the Illuminati, who they might have been speaking to, and to what extent.
Okay, so as far as like the whole 1776 thing like that, it's just like it's kind of like a watershed moment in history, right? You've got the Declaration of Independence, the Illuminati's formed. You get what was that book? Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith over there in England. You also get Gideon's Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. So all these great things are happening. For whatever reason, it's some kind of synchronistic period in history like that. The late apex of the Enlightenment. Literacy and literature itself like that are at a high watermark, right? So that one is just, it's a matter of coincidence. But like what we see is going on in the early American Republic. So the early American Republic, like that, they're trying to get all these people to help them because, here they are facing off with the world's greatest empire. They're basically, for all intents and purposes, they have no manufacturing. They're dependent on finished goods, things like that. And so they're trying to form alliances. So they send Adams and Franklin to be envoys in Paris, right? Well, the Illuminati, they're influenced by a revolution. Because remember, at 1780 at this point like that, they're just now starting to expand out. Knigge has been brought into the order, but he's not in communication with Weishaupt. That doesn't happen until 1781. So at this point, the Illuminati itself is, for all intents and purposes, a slightly developed college kind of academic fraternity that's trying to integrate itself with Freemasonry. So would they write to Adams and Franklin while they're in Paris? And I found these letters using Reinhardt's book, and somehow or another they missed it. And I think it was because a guy named Professor Bader, he wrote to these guys under a pen name of Kempton Strauss.
Right.
And so basically he's writing, look, we're trying to immigrate here. We're looking for a square mile of fallow land in a healthful and fertile country. And, would your excellencies be so kind as to take us under your wing protection and, just don't meddle with our internal affairs, but we'll definitely fight with you and this kind of stuff like that. So it's a bunch of young guys in their early 20s, looking at what's going on over here in America with these people rising up. They're trying to throw off an oppressive government that's not fair to them. They were kind of following what was going on in the newspapers at that point in time, all the news and so they're writing to come over there. Well, it doesn't work out for them because where they're wanting to go is there's a group of German Salzburgers in 1736 that kind of settled in this town called Pearisburg in South Carolina, and it's right off the Savannah River. And across the river from that was this town in Georgia called Ebenezer. And so these German Salzburgers, it's common knowledge to them that, oh, well, there's these German-speaking people that are here already. Why don't we go to this spot over here? The trouble was, and what wasn't getting back to Germany, kind of like, remember like the Mississippi bubble when they were saying, oh, look, this place like that, you'll come to Louisiana, there's like, gold on every hill, and you can do this, that, and the other. And really, it was just a big, gigantic swamp that they were trying to get people to go to.
Right.
It's the same kind of thing going for them. So they think this land is great, but it's like a mosquito-ridden swamp for all intents and purposes. And so, like when they're writing for like a square mile of fallow land in a healthful and fertile country, it's not healthful or fertile.
Right. And so, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was just going to say that. It's kind of ironic that they're wanting this spot, but it doesn't even matter. All this, right about the same point in time that they're writing these letters to them, just a few days later, they totally cut off. At the Battle of Charleston, they cut off the southern colonies, right, from even participating in the war. So they're under British occupation. So at this point, the British, they're moving pretty hard on them. But also, the Washington and them are starting to win victories too, not being the Battle of Charleston. So they're about to start winning all these victories. So the place they want to go to is captured by the British. So it closes off the idea. But the even more important part is, again, it's young men in their 20s. Like young men in their 20s don't have a whole lot of money, and their society they've got doesn't really have a clearly defined funding mechanism. It's all like on the honor system. It's like, well, you'll donate this much at this meeting, but it's really however much you can afford, and some people can afford and some people can't. And so they've got poor finances. It's kind of like a pipe dream. They're like, oh, we want to join the revolution and help the Americans. Yes, that's what we'll do, and then we'll get our own land. And it's like it's young men in their 20s being idealistic. And that's the reason why the plot never goes. And they called it Elysium, which is kind of funny. That was a code name. So like they would have different, like Bavaria was Athens. And they would, like, remember I said in their letters, they would write about places, but they'd call them like names of cities out of antiquity.
Well, I thought the Elysium was a great name, I thought.
Oh, yeah, it was really cool because if you think about it, ideologically, they're like in this kind of backwards place compared to the rest of Europe.
Yes.
It's under the thumb of the church. And like, here's this place in America like that. You can say whatever you want, do whatever you want. And they're trying to throw off the yoke of tyranny is the way they saw it. And so, yeah, that it totally describes everything.
So they were actually quite inspired by the American Revolution.
Yeah, that's what's so crazy about it is it was really the other way around. And I think one of the ideas where like the concept, like there's this modern narrative that the Illuminati, they came to America. Thomas Jefferson, he was an Illuminist. Oh, and that seal on the back of the dollar bill. Well, you know what? That's also their seal too. So really, this, that, and the other. And what it was this book written in 1955, and the guy he was a member of the John Birch Society. And so they were like in the height of the Red Scare at this point. So one of the things is this book called Roosevelt's Communist Manifesto. And if you read this book, first chapter, I don't know if you read it or not.
I've got it. I'm looking at it on my iPad right now.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So like if you read this whole book in there, really the first chapter is the most important part because later they take something from Clinton Roosevelt and they try to say, oh, look, he's advocating for the abolition of private property and this, that, and the other. And it was just like, it was a Democratic, and not like in the modern sense, but the Democrat Republican Party. It was a Democratic kind of like a platform that's later in the book that he's advocating for. But according to Mr. Emanuel Josephson, no, this is evidence of communism. And so he fabricates this whole narrative in the beginning that they came over here, Jefferson's Illuminatis. It's throwing mud around for a political agenda. I guess that by today's standards, they're far right, and they're against this perceived threat of communism. Like we're at the height of the Red Scare, and that's the whole like the inspiration behind this book for writing it. But the whole you get three conspiracy theories in this one. One, the narrative that we have today that they came over to the States. You get two, that the obverse of the Great Seal is the seal of the Illuminati, and three, you get that Jefferson's an Illuminist, and really that the Illuminati were like proto-communists, which that's where it all comes from. And if you read just that first chapter in that book, you'll get everything you need to know.
Wow. Well, explain to us then what is on the seal. Explain what this pyramid is, and the eye in reality.
Okay. So in reality, there's this book from like 1646, right? So like what's going on, there's like a lot of like Egyptian influence into architecture in the 1780s. The question is why? Where does that come from? What's going on is like there's a really good book. If people will get it, it's called Art and Architecture of Freemasonry. And what it does is it goes like into the late Enlightenment. It looks at like evolution of like Masonic influence in architecture. And so we start getting these Egyptian themes because Egypt, in the late part of the Enlightenment, like that, with the rise of Napoleon and things like that, the French Republic is starting to get back on its feet after the terror of Robespierre. And so they're over there in Egypt, and you start getting all these influences, right? But it even goes further back. There's a guy named John Greaves in 1646. He writes this book called Pyramidographia, and so basically he's trying to duplicate in this book the calculations of the height of the Khufu's pyramid. Mm-hmm. And so he does all these etchings and calculations. He calculates the theoretical height of it, and he pretty accurately too, by measuring the length of the shadow of the pyramid at noon, or as close to noon as he can get. He takes a couple different measurements, but he gets roughly what it is, and it's actually pretty good. And he's also the first guy to figure out to draw like a cross section of Khufu's pyramid and show off the inner chambers and tunnels and things like that.
Yes.
But the reason I mention all this is because like the iconic image of a pyramid, you can look at this book and you can see right away that it's the exact same profile, angle, and everything of Khufu's pyramid. The only difference between the one that's printed in Pyramidographia is that it's got more of like the capstone removed, right? And so, like, the Latin part, annuitus coeptis, novus ordo seclorum, is like crown to success, or he favors our undertaking of a new secular order. And what they're talking about is like the birth of a republic, right? And so the eye is the eye of God. The 1776 is the Declaration of Independence, and it's unfinished because what they're saying is like, look, we've started building the foundation of this republic, but but it's an incomplete work. It basically, but the work is being overseen by God. So we'll finish this thing basically. Well,
I understand.
So in the Illuminati, they have like in the Minerval degree. After where the Masonic elements are put back into the ritual, they're put into the ritual, there's a tracing board that has the same image of a pyramid, and it's exactly the same angle as Pyramidographia. And the reason why that it's in both of these seals, or not seals, it's in both of these images, is because if you were to study pyramids and stuff like that, and you're in the 18th century, you're not traveling very far. The only knowledge you have of the outside world is through literature, is through books. And John Greaves' book was reprinted in 1756. So probably the Illuminati and the founders of the earlier American Republic, when they're drafting out concepts for this great seal, they're all influenced by this same iconic image. So it's a variation of it. And so in the Great Seal, it's annuus coeptis novus ordo seclorum. In the Illuminati, it says Deo proximo, near to God, or God is with us. And so it's not like an uncapped pyramid, it's a finished pyramid, but there's stones on the ground. And so like in the explanation, I guess if you guys wanted to, I could read it to you. You want to hear that?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, okay. Pull this little thing up. So basically, like what's going on is they're trying to get all these things and get it all to come together. And
because I'm looking at the illustrations that you're talking about, and you're right. I mean, his version of the pyramid is more of an isosceles triangle than an equilateral triangle,
right?
Which is the same as what is on the dollar, which of course is not the Great Pyramid. The Great Pyramid is I don't think it's an isosceles.
Well, no. What I'm getting at is if you go find Pyramidographia, and I forget what page it's on. But he's got this one iconic view of the thing like that, and it's at the same angle. Now, if it's finished or it's not finished, it's the shape and the form is what I'm talking about.
Right.
Okay, so here's the thing, and it says, I'll just read the part about the pyramid to you. So the explanation of the nerval symbols, it says, and this is the people that have just been initiated to Illuminatus Minor, and remember they had to be Freemasons, and they're watching over the Minerval Assembly. So it's teaching the former Minerval what's the meaning of these symbols, right?
Yes.
So it says, you are now entrusted with the care of young pupils who shall be enlightened under your leadership and educated by wisdom. This work requires vigilance, industry, and activity. Let the letters inscribed on the order seal PMCV remind you of this. They stand for Per Me Cace Vident, which means through me the blind become sighted. It says, now take a look at the pyramid you can find painted on the carpet of the Minerval Church. and around which lie several scattered stones. This is a symbol of our illustrious order, which takes large steps closer to its goal, if only the members join forces in working towards its attainment for the honor of the Supreme Architect and the happiness of the world. Therefore, you will find written there, Deo Proximo, BP.
Wow. Tell us some more dispel some more of these conspiracy theories, because I'm sitting here looking at some things. Are more symbols that we think are have their origin in the Illuminati, but they really do not.
Okay. Oh, so are you talking about like the owl or something like that?
Yes.
Okay, so like
that's
owl,
a great one, actually.
Yeah. Okay, so like I know people want to go with the whole Bohemian Grove thing, and then I know there's people right now that are putting videos out about, oh, really, that Skull and Bones, that's also part of the Illuminati. So I'll tell you what, I'll get both of those. So let's start with Bohemian Grove, right?
Okay.
So, the Bohemian Club like that itself, like that, it originally starts out as like a kind of like a society for artists, painters, actors, poets, things like that. It's a muse society. So the reason why they picked the owl is the same reason the Greeks picked the owl, which is the same reason the Romans picked the owl, and it's for wisdom, right? So in Greek mythology is the origin. You have Pallas Athena, and if she starts off with Athena and she wrestles with Pallas, and then she accidentally kills Pallas, and so she takes on the name Pallas Athena, and her symbol is the owl for wisdom, right? And there's like this whole cult thing like that back in the Eleusinian mysteries like that, where there's like owls and stuff all over Greece. Well, with the Romans, when they would conquer lands and stuff like that, and also this religion had already existed for a while, they had a good thing about not changing the local customs, but adopting them and embracing them, and also weaving in their gods and goddesses and different ideas and things like that. So they assimilated societies that they came over the control of, right? And so Minerva changes over, or so not Minerva, Pallas changes over into the Roman mythology, into Minerva, right? And so the same symbol, same everything, they just assimilate it and put a Latin name on top of it for Minerva. And so the reason why this image is on any of this stuff, and anytime you see an owl, what they're talking about is the iconic symbol for wisdom, right? It's the same reason the Illuminati picked it up.
And that
makes
sense.
Illuminati, like they're trying to establish like that their ideas, like there are these great ideas that come from antiquity. It's not so much a ruse as it is an inspiration, right? So they picked the owl sitting on the book with the Latin phrases "per me cace vident," through me the blind see. And they picked that, they're using Latin and stuff, and there's Latin like all throughout this book. But the good news is it's all been footnoted, so don't worry about it.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, let's go back to Weishaupt for just a second, because it's interesting to me that after all of this, after things kind of, they're used as the red herring, that he ends up spending the remainder of his life kind of in semi-obscurity.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, something, I guess one of the things that keeps gnawing at me about this is, do you think that he was sincere all the time, or was some of the creation of this a bit of self-promotion? I don't, it just seems to me like a person, if you're that much a person of your convictions, it's like, it just seems like he kind of gave up.
Well,
am I reading this wrong?
Well, so there's two ways to look at it, right? So he has like a lot of his personality traits like that. He's got severely narcissistic personality traits where, he's got the traumatic youth experience in his youth. He turns inward, studies books and things like that, has kind of this magical thinking where he wants to, he wants to change the world for the better, and I'm the perfect person for this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. So he's got this magical thinking like that, and it drives him onto this great dream and vision, and that's what he's trying to accomplish. But the thing is, he's defeated, right? And so it was literally like book after book after book. But the thing was, he kept trying to rebut all these books. They would say, oh, this, that, and the other about you. And he's like, oh, no, that's not true. Here's my actual intentions. Here's some of these letters. Let me give you some context to what was going on in some of these books. So they're cherry picking things to embarrass him and to scorn him like that. So he flees into exile. He's under the protection of another duke. And so basically his character is assassinated. And so instead of like, at some point he just basically gives up. It's like, look, I'm just going to live a quiet life now. Just, thanks. He just quits basically. And that's what goes on. So he starts off roaring like a lion like that, but ultimately like that, even though he's got this magical thinking, this grand utopian vision like that, he's incapable of completing this dream that he has all by himself like that. So he has to get the help from others. But the trouble is he wants to be in control of everything. And so it basically leads, his greatest strength is also his greatest weakness, his ability to organize and to group others and stuff like that. And it leads to his own downfall. And so he's basically, he's smeared in the public, and he finally just gives up.
Okay, so as he becomes so unpopular, you mentioned that he comes under the patronage of this duke. Why does this duke take him under his wing or provide him shelter?
Sure. So this duke was a member of the order. Now, some people will say, oh, well, they were against monarchy, this, that, and the other. No, they were against corrupt monarchy like that. Now, in the ritual stuff like that, they're not for bringing in members of the nobility or advancing them very far like that, if you actually read these texts like that. But, Duke Ernst II like that, he is a former member of the strict observance. He's into all these different things that are in vogue at the time. He's slightly older than Weishaupt himself. But he comes under his protection because it's like, well, look, here's the former founder of this society. He needs a place to stay. It's my duty to help my brother, to give him a shot here. And so he kind of just fades into quiet obscurity like that under his protection. And it's not like he's constantly blocking for him. After a little bit of time like that, Bavaria finally just gives up like that, and like he just kind of goes to being a quiet, peaceful old man. That's kind of the way it goes. And
does Knigge and he do they ever kind of make up at all, or are they just on the outs from then on?
No, they're on the outs from then on. And Knigge doesn't live very much longer. He dies like in the 1790s. And Adam Weishaupt, if I remember right, it's 1837 is when he dies. So, he lives quite a bit longer. So Knigge resigns in 1784, and by the early, I want to say 1793, but I could be wrong, he dies. So basically, he lives for another 9 years after resigning from the order, and that's it for him. He dies young.
Does Weishaupt remain a Freemason?
Yeah.
Or does he kind of drop out of it?
Well, he's got Masonic affiliation already at this point like that, but for him, Freemasonry was never about being a Freemason. Freemasonry was just a means of spreading his society. So, I don't know specifically about, his continued Masonic activities, and maybe he did, maybe he didn't. I don't see any evidence one way or the other for it like that, but if I had to guess, I'd say that, him being a Freemason like that wasn't so much about being a Freemason as it was as a ends to a means, or means to an end, sorry.
Understood. He was kind of he was looking for recruits.
Yeah, that's all he was doing. And so, they have all these college kids. They want to link up with Freemasonry because, they're spreading these Minerval assemblies and all these little local towns around Ingolstadt, but they want to advance further. And the only way they can do that is to take an existing society and do it. So when they started out, they had the absolute intentions of doing a proper merger with Freemasonry, where they want to take the first 3 degrees, novice, Minerval, Illuminatus, or which later became Illuminatus minor.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted to take those 3 degrees and merge them with Entered Apprentice, Fellowcraft, and Master Mason. And that's what they were trying to do, is to make it like a concurrent thing. Well, that was Adam Weishaupt's idea. In point of fact, you try and lay this thing out on paper, and it doesn't make any sense at all. You see the degrees that, and we've got them published in there too, so you actually get to go, as you read along through the book, you get to go through all of the symbolic degrees that someone would have gone through in one of their Masonic systems at the time. So, not only do you get to see all of the Illuminati degrees, but you get to see all the Freemasonic degrees at that time.
From what I'm reading, and there is really no proof that anyone from the original Bavarian Illuminati, I guess, continued onwards with the Illuminati after their deaths. So what is the legacy of the Bavarian Illuminati now? Not what the public thinks when they hear the word Illuminati, but what, in your mind, is the legacy? What are we left with?
Are we talking about a pop culture context? Or are we talking historically?
Historically.
Okay.
I'm just trying to figure out, for something that only lasted 10 to 13 years, and supposedly it did not exist after that, I guess I'm trying to figure out what are we left with after this?
Okay, so let me clarify a few points.
Okay.
So basically, after the edict in 1785, the southern half of the Bavarian Illuminati, they're totally toast, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the founder leaves; they're all scattered. Well, remember, Germany's a bunch of loosely connected states at this point. I mean, yeah, there's an empire, but they're autonomous of each other, right? Kind of like a long time ago, Texas couldn't tell Oklahoma what to do, and Oklahoma couldn't tell Nevada what to do. It was that kind of thing, like a federation or confederation, something like this. And so the southern states, they're totally squashed, right? But that doesn't carry over to these northern states. So the northern Illuminati, they function on, for a few more years, and they continue growing, for a couple of years past this, because what they're doing is, the northern Illuminati, they wanted there's a guy named Johann Christoph Bode, and Bode, he wants to basically, he likes their idea for this Masonic reform, but he wants to run with it a little bit more, because Masonically, what's going on at this point in time is there's people looking into, they think that the highest purpose of Freemasonry is alchemy, to transmutate lead into gold and things like that. And there's other people that are into all this spiritualist stuff where they have supposedly have communications with invisible beings and things like that.
Right.
So it's all kind of the mystical occult type stuff like that. And the Illuminati, contrary to popular opinion, are totally against all this stuff. They're rationalists. They want logic, reason, enlightenment, virtue, morality, things like that, like hard, concrete things like that. And so all these speculative ideas, they were very popular at the time in Freemasonry, because no one really could agree where Freemasonry came from or what the point of it even was, within Masonic circles. And so you have these different factions. Well, in the Northern Illuminati, they liked what Knigge had done to these degrees. All these guys were pretty much loyal to him or had come through the system through him, including Bode himself. And so they basically want to carry on what they're doing Masonically, not so much as far as reforming society, making virtue victorious and vice, plundering vice, basically. That's not what the idea is. It's to reform Freemasonry back to saying that, look, speculative Freemasonry comes from the Grand Lodge of England. We're not taking this Templar stuff. We're not going with this mystical stuff. This is not, we're not going to be practicing any kind of theosophy. We're not going to be doing any kind of mystical or magical or alchemical things here anymore. The point of Freemasonry is that it's a club for men to come together to try to improve themselves, to be the best that they can be for the little bit of time they have here on this earth, and to also enjoy each other's company while doing it, doing good things. That's what they want to return to, the actual true purpose and nature of Freemasonry, and to toss all these things that, quite frankly, made a lot of people a lot of money, strict observance included. It made people money for making these degrees. Oh, well, you've heard the truth over here with Freemasonry. This is actually what it is over here. And if you'll just pay this low fee of whatever and so many installments, you too can learn the truth. And that's what was going on. And so this northern group of the Illuminati, they want to reform this stuff. So there's, I'm sure you're aware that they tried in 1787 that Bode himself goes over to France to this lodge called Les Amis Réunis, and people have misinterpreted it, and they think that, the Illuminati spreading right there, and then they're going to start the French Revolution.
Right,
well,
right.
That's not quite how it goes. What he was doing was he wrote this big paper, and it was basically that, the purpose of Freemasonry is everything I just said. It's really founded in 1717. You guys practicing alchemy over here like that, this is ridiculous. But he didn't say ridiculous. He just kind of, through a logical and rational argumentative process, using inductive and deductive reasoning, that, this can't be true. This is what we need to do here. And so he doesn't make this Convention of Paris in 1787 on time. He's late getting there, but he still gets an audience with Savalette de Lange, who is this he's the worshipful master of this lodge, Les Amis Réunis, Friends United. And so they convinced him that basically his paper got read twice in this convention because it was so popular, and it allowed him to get an audience with this guy. So he's like, look, here's what we were doing over here. We understand that the name Illuminati is not popular anywhere, but what we want to do is, they want to take some of the Scottish degrees like that and roll them back into an existing Masonic rite. So what they were doing is they were trying to take, especially in France, they were into this alchemical stuff, and they wanted to flip it back the other direction and right itself and make Freemasonry work like it was supposed to work and not what it had become. And so what's interesting about this stuff is, so Bode, he can speak some French, but he's not, if he was writing an academic paper, it's not going to go so well. So there's this guy named Jacob Mauvollon, and that's a French name, but I'm probably butchering that one too. So anyways, he translates all this stuff, and he's buddies with Count Mirabeau. When Mirabeau's papers, the actual plan they were trying to put into place is actually out there. It's been out there the whole time, but nobody recognized what it was, and it's even been translated into English too.
Wait a minute, I'm not understanding. Why is that?
Well, no, nobody realized what it was. I think Terry Mellenton pointed it out, and then when I read it, I almost fell out of my chair. I was like, well, this is exactly what they're doing. And what's in this plan, like, you can look it up. Mellenton's got a link for it. Maybe I'll email it to you guys here after the show's over. But you can read this document, and what was going on was they were basically taking the Scottish Novice and the Scottish Knight degree and elements of some of the other degrees, rolling them into two consolidated degrees to add on top of the Phil Phase system. So the Phil Phase was the rite that was being practiced at Les Amis Réunis, and so they wanted to make this top grade called the Philadelphia Phase. And so what it was a reformed degree, or 2 degrees, sorry, and they're trying to roll it all together into this system as a means of Masonic reform. And there's evidence that they were communicating with these guys, as late as 1792. But the French Revolution gets going like in earnest like that. If you're a member of a Masonic lodge like that, if you've got kind of like a populist people's type movement, the Sans-Culotte, which means without knee breeches. So basically, it's a group of people that's against aristocracy or wealth. They want everyone to be common. They want to literally enact Rousseau's what am I thinking? Social contract. That's what it is. They're trying to enact Rousseau's social contract in France and make it like the actual system of governance. And so it's not popular to be a Freemason at this point. And what they end up doing is just all the lodges kind of whimper off and go quiet after about 1792, this one included. And really, I'm sure that they had declining membership going into it because, the revolution starts in 1789. By 1792, they stopped corresponding back with this lodge in Goethe in Germany. And, that's really the way the story plays out. So they probably, we don't have anything conclusive, but they probably just get kind of swept up in the whole French Revolution, and that's the end of them. And we don't even have any papers from that lodge anymore. I mean, like in the French Revolution, they pretty much destroyed everything.
Mm-hmm. We're speaking with Josef Wages. He is a Freemason, a historian. He has a book called The Colombian Illuminati. When is that coming out, Joseph?
Well, I've got the bulk of the text done. Now that one is real interesting because what it does is it goes into the early like Illuminati scare in the late 18th and early 19th centuries. And I'll give a hint like that all this Illuminati scare, everything that was in the newspapers, even the people that were agitated like Morse and all these other guys. What it boils down to this one individual, this guy named Elihu Palmer, who ironically was like evangelizing for deism, but that's a different story in and of itself. And so what it does is it looks at all the extant primary sources, including like personal correspondences and things like that, and it gets to the heart of the matter, what was going on back then, because there was definitely something going on. I mean, if you tried to deny that, you'd be wrong, because you can read all the existing newspapers. Something was going on. What was it? And, just to kind of throw it out there, this all kind of fires up in 1798. Well, what happens in 1798? Well, the Proofs of a Conspiracy comes out along with the English translation of Barrel's works, like that 4-volume series, the History of Jacobinism. And so the thesis of these papers is that Freemasonry and all these things like that, it's been overtaken by the Illuminati, and what they're really trying to do is enact this whole French Republic thing over here. And it's horrible. It's terrible. They're plotting against us right now. Basic hysteria and stuff like that.
Right.
And so, and that stuff is later used, like in the election of 1800 to smear Jefferson, which is probably where what's his name, Emmanuel Josephson kind of got the idea for that stuff to put in his little book, Roosevelt's Communist Manifesto. And so that's what's going on. All this stuff is. In the early republic, it all boils down to this one guy, and it's like, the Proofs of the Conspiracy and history or memoirs in the history of Jacobinism. It basically comes down to that, these Illuminati, they took and started the French Revolution. They're trying to do it here. So anything French or anything, this way or that, it's the Illuminati at work here. So it was like a political agenda. And but this guy Palmer, he was the guy that was agitating the whole thing. And what started out is that he goes to school. He graduates from Dartmouth in 1787. He goes off to Massachusetts to try to become a preacher. Well, he loses his pulpit because he starts preaching stuff that's not in the Bible. So he's starting to get influenced quite a bit by all this French philosophy and things like this. And he accurately predicts in 1787 in this one pamphlet, 1788, that that the French Revolution is going to happen and we should join up with him like that. So you can see like the history of the radicalization of this guy. He travels to a couple of other churches, loses his pulpits for the exact same reason. And so basically, the guy's kind of a sophist, and he loses his pulpit. So if you can't be a preacher, well, the next best thing is lawyer, right? I mean, if you're going to be a mouthpiece, that's the next profession for you. And so he goes off and he starts practicing law, and he runs into this guy named John Fitch. And John Fitch is the original inventor of the steamboat, and he comes across this guy who has this club called the Universal Society. And the Universal Society is like John Fitch and probably 10 or 15 of his friends. It's kind of a deist debating club. And they're basically kind of poking fun at Christianity here and there like that. So he runs across this Elihu Palmer guy, who's this lawyer, former preacher, and he's immediately impressed by him. He's like, well, hey, why don't you come give a lecture to my Universal Society over there? So he comes down there and he gives this lecture against the divinity of Jesus. And, the guys in the club, they think it's the greatest thing ever. Well, it emboldens Palmer, and he advertises in the newspaper, next Sunday, this lecture against the divinity of Jesus. And so that's not very well received.
I can't imagine.
So they run him out. They run him out of town. He flees. Probably burns his stuff, loses a bunch of things like that. And so he goes off into obscurity for a little bit. Well, a few years later, he's struck blind by this yellow fever epidemic in 1793. His wife dies. So here's this, and he goes blind because of it. So here's this blind guy with 2 kids, no profession. So he sends his kids to live with his dad. And so the only way this guy can make an existence is God gave him like the ability to speak, right? So he's like, well, I like this deism so much, I'm just going to evangelize deism. So he goes and starts these little deist clubs all over the place. But the thing is, back then that was a really bad idea. So he doesn't last very long in a town, sets up a club, leaves and goes somewhere else, finds like-minded people, goes somewhere else, or is forced to go somewhere else. And so all the scare we see going on at the time like that, and I can track every last bit of it. It's him. He's going to all these different places. He gets ran out of town, goes someplace else. So all these things that are going on in the newspapers like that, they've got all these letters published to the preacher of liberal sentiments and this, that, and the other. They're agitating him like that, and he's responding back to it. And somewhere along the way, he gets remarried to this lady because he can't take care of himself. He's like this blind guy in like the 1790s riding a stagecoach from town to town, being kicked out from place to place.
Relying on his charismatic personality.
Yeah, relying on his charismatic personality, but like spewing vinegar out of his mouth in the ears of the public. So it's really kind of funny. And so he writes this book, Principles of Nature. He sends Jefferson a copy. Jefferson doesn't reply to it, because I'm sure he got lots of these things. And if you read all the different publications, he starts all these magazines up. One was called the Temple of Reason. Another one was called the Theophilanthropist. So he starts up all these magazines. If you read them, I've got copies of all the like every issue, and it's some of the most obscene and abhorrent things like that. Like even if you hold these kind of views, to do that kind of stuff and print that kind of thing into print is so offensive to people. I mean, you can understand why he didn't last very long. And so finally he dies off in 1806, and here's where it gets really weird. So along the way, he becomes correspondent with Thomas Paine, and they're best buddies. So Palmer dies in 1806, and his second wife goes and lives with Thomas Paine. She's willed something from his estate when he dies in 1810, but basically she's penniless and this, that, and the other. So he had contacts with Paine, and also like early in his career, he worked with, what was that guy's name? Jedediah Morse on his geography book. So in some of the letters I've got back and forth, it starts off where they're all cordial and friendly, and he starts getting radicalized as the French Revolution gets going in earnest in 1791. He starts calling him citizen this and citizen that, and he's always got this excuse like, well, I can't send these papers in now, but don't worry, citizen, next month I'm sending them in, and we're going to get this book out. And it's excuse after excuse. And so you see like the radicalization of this guy, through these like 5 letters. It's really cool.
Wow, this is a tremendous amount of scholarship you've put into this. I admire it greatly. We were speaking to Josef Wages, and pretty soon, next in October, we will see the release of The Secret School of Wisdom, the authentic rituals and doctrines of the Illuminati. I was going to give a couple of websites here for people to check out and make sure that I've got all of the correct ones. You guys have a Facebook account. You have a Secret School of Wisdom. And also, you guys are on the Lewis Masonic site, of course. It looks like it is, well, it's a pretty long, I won't actually put that one out there because it's a long URL. And then you can pre-order The Secret School of Wisdom on Amazon.com. Joseph, give us some more sites for folks who want to learn more about you and the Bavarian Illuminati.
Well, me's not so much important. It's just like getting to good scholarship. Really, the Facebook page has a lot of the links. So if you'll find us like on Facebook, you'll just search for The Secret School of Wisdom, make us your friends, and you'll get all the updates and things like that. And we've got lots of articles and things that are, pretty interesting. There's some promotional videos on there for the book that I think are pretty neat. And there's one that's like it's really good, but I call it like the Dan Brown trailer because it's super dramatic and everything. It's over the top, but it's so much fun. I couldn't help it.
Yeah, Did you make that?
No, I didn't make those videos. I had a brother make those for me, and he's a really really talented guy. A guy named Andrew Halton. And he made those videos for us, and they're I can't say enough nice things about him because it's really well produced. But that one that I call the Dan Brown trailer, it's over the top, but it's so much fun.
Yeah, it's great. And I think also we've got is Jiva's site the BavarianIlluminati.wordpress?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, that's a good one as well. Let me repeat that. It's BavarianIlluminati.wordpress.com. That's another great site that I was taking a look at today. Joseph, it has been a blast having you on the show today, man. I commend your work. I wish you the best with the book, actually both books. So when do you think the Colombian Illuminati will come out? Well,
I don't know. I'd like to try and get the thing out. Like I said, the last 5 years, like I had that Colombian Illuminati book. I really had it, probably about 75-80% done by about 2010. And that's when I started like kind of shifting over into this one because my thought was, well, we can talk about the Colombian Illuminati, but there's no context. Nobody even knows what the Illuminati was. And so it's just kind of like a serendipitous, thing of circumstances that kind of came together and allowed the ritual book to come first. And really it's important that it did come first because you'll never be able to figure out what's even the context. So like if you read all of what was in this book, you're going to see what the Illuminati were. So when you read the Colombian Illuminati, you'll understand that now this isn't the same thing at all, like even close.
I get it. Let me ask you this. So in the minute or couple of minutes we have left, what is your hope for the book? What do you hope the populace will kind of walk away from with the Secret School of Wisdom?
My main hope is that I hope that people look at it and, read it objectively like that because, people will read into it what they will read into it. Some people will say, oh, this proves a conspiracy. And it's not for me to say. I just want people to read the book to try and arrive at a correct knowledge and understanding of what is going on. What was this group about? Were they good? Were they bad? You insert your opinion there, but just to become educated because really we've been needing this for such a long time because, the wild, like this is a satanic conspiracy theory and what's that and the other. It's ridiculous. And let's find out what they were actually about. It really is like it's the beginning of like a new field, like of scholarly research into this group. And it can't be done without the ritual book. And once we have the ritual book, it's up for people to decide for themselves what they think was going on.
I couldn't have said it better myself. I'm coming away from this with a much more realistic. I had one of your brothers on a few weeks ago. I'm coming away from learning about Freemasonry and the Illuminati with a much more realistic, less sensationalist view of all of this, and I've been very impressed with what I've learned recently.
Well, great. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah, and I'm getting a little message here that we're about to wind this up. My name is Michael Parker. You've been listening to the Electric Pyramid. Our guest tonight was Josef Wages. Our producer was Joe Kieran. Joe, do you have anything before we wrap this boy up?
Yeah, I would just like to remind everyone that we are fully listener supported at freedomslips.com.